Hello, this is Salvatore Vinciguerra, and in this video I'm going to be sharing with you my hike to Cataract Falls in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park near the Sugarlands Visitors Center near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Please enjoy this video. I've been to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park several times, but I've never been on this particular hike to Cataract Falls. This trail is located near the Sugarlands Visitors Center, which is only 2 miles away from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Here are some of the views that you can pick up by traveling on the Parkway bypass, and I highly suggest that you travel some of those roads that are less traveled so you can see some of these extraordinary views of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which include one of the highest points, which is Mount LeConte all the way in the background, and in the foreground of this view you can see the downtown area of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. When you get to the Sugarlands Visitors Center of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, walk to the back of the visitor center, or from a different parking area. You can actually pick it up from the parking area and look out for the Fighting Creek Trail, or there's a nature trail that leads you to this trail. First it's paved and then it's gravel, as you see in some of these photos and video of my hike to Cataract Falls. Now this is an entire loop, and I'm only going to be sharing with you the hike to Cataract Falls. You can also, if you have more time, visit the John Ownby cabin. So just a little bit of history as you're walking through some of these areas and visiting the cabins and so forth. When you see some of that, you have to remember that that was the lifestyle, that is where people lived before this became a national park. And can you imagine just what this would look like, because people would live off of this creek and live out here, and so there would not only be a cabin out here, there would be a school, there would be a store, there would be a church and a post office, and people would live in these thriving communities that predate the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. I do want to give the National Park Service some credit. Look at these trails. They are quite clean, and I do want to say that they're always updating, they're always making sure that the trails in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park are up to date and safe for people to go on them. There's maybe a couple, some of the bigger trails that you go on, or remote trails that maybe they're not kept up. Compared to other national parks that I visited, for example, Yellowstone National Park, the nation's oldest national park, I find this to be very clean. Yellowstone was not necessarily, the trails were not as updated or walkable to actually hike on them. And yeah, people want some rough terrain and they want to feel like they're hiking and so forth, but you also have to make these trails accessible to people for them to explore. And I know that there are pros and cons, and even in talking to some of the rangers at Yellowstone National Park, I guess one of the feelings of the National Park Service is to keep everything historical, but then, what does that lead to? In some controversy about making it accessible for all. And I know that some of the park rangers do fight so that it can be accessible for everyone. And I just feel that this particular national park is very family friendly. This is a very family friendly hike. You're not going from a very high elevation to a low elevation, and they've made it a very easy afternoon hike for everyone to go on. And that's what I did. This was an evening hike for me when the temperatures are nice and cool, and you can even have a snack out here before you go back to wherever, or you can visit the cabin. The visitor center is of course closed, but the restrooms outside of the visitor center are open. This is a beautiful short hike, which is only about 3/4 of a mile round trip. You get to walk underneath the bridge, there's a boardwalk, and there's this wonderful Fighting Creek River just sitting here waiting for you to stop and listen to it. Here's some information about the trail itself and the expectations of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Proper trail shoes are recommended, and sometimes I use hiking shoes for adventures such as this, and sometimes I don't. But sometimes you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. I would say that you really don't need hiking shoes for a hike like this. There are some other hikes in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park and some of the other national parks that I visited that you do need hiking shoes for and hiking sticks. But for everyone, I would just say that sometimes a hiking stick is a good thing to have versus those hiking shoes on an adventure like this, because look at the different areas that I'm going over where maybe there's a step here or a step there, so sometimes it can be slippery, and you want to make sure that you do overall have good shoes and maybe a hiking stick. Weather in this area can change quite drastically and very fast, and so you want to make sure that you're always tracking the weather and looking at the temperatures. You're looking to see what storms are coming through as it changes at different times of the year. Now this is summer, so it can be very hot. You want to make sure that you have enough water to make sure that you're hydrated, especially if you're doing this hike on a hot summer day, and the temperatures can be in the 80s and 90s with even a hotter index of maybe 100 or over that. So make sure that you're prepared for the weather. In the winter, it may be totally different. You want to make sure that you have a jacket and so forth. And each trail is different, and you may want to do some research on some of the trails in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park so you know before you go what the expectations for those different hiking trails are. Another thing before you go on this particular trail, leave your pet somewhere. Leave your pet at home. And I'm glad that people in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park actually follow the rules when you're on certain trails such as this. Pets are prohibited. And in certain national parks where they tell you that pets are prohibited, people need to follow those rules. And many of these national parks, sometimes people don't follow the rules, and then things happen to their pets on these particular trails. And everybody gets upset about when those things happen, but rules are in place for very good reasons. Another thing about this area is there's no camping allowed. Make sure that you go to the proper camping areas. They have some beautiful camping areas here in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. They're very reasonable. I have a whole video on the Elkmont campground, so check out those different areas as they're absolutely amazing and they're the proper places for you to camp. And here is the approach to Cataract Falls. And as you can see, there are places where you can just sit down, relax, and watch the waterfall and reflect. They really don't want you walking on the waterfall. They don't want anybody getting hurt out here. So just be very cautious, as the rocks are very slippery if you do try to get close to the waterfall to get a better look at it.
Wait for everybody to come. They'll come down the same way. I want to just phone the first boss so you can take pictures. Very close, right?
Here's a little bit of the Cove Mountain Trail, which is on the other side of Cataract Falls. And yes, in order to get to this trail, you have to walk through the slippery wet stones of Cataract Falls in order to get to this particular point. I wanted to walk on this particular trail just to see what it was. And, you know, just to get a feel for, well, what is happening here? What can you see if you go a little bit past the falls and so forth? And it also shares with you as viewers, well, you know, on this particular trail, as you're continuing to climb up an incline, yes, that you're going around the mountain, you may need some hiking shoes if you want to go a little bit further than what I shared with you. Even your hiking shoes would be good if you're walking across a lot of very slippery terrain, which some of these trails in the Great Smoky Mountains do have. And, you know, if you want to get to Laurel Falls, I would highly suggest that you don't take this trail. I would highly suggest that you get in your car and you go to the area where you can pick up that particular trail to go to the falls. This is Salvatore Vinciguerra. Thank you for watching this video of my hike to Cataract Falls near the Sugarlands Visiting Center in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park near Gatlinburg, Tennessee. If you like this video, please like it, subscribe to this channel, and have a great day. Thank you.